"Get out of my way! You don't belong here!" The words cut through the air like a blade, echoing in the Grand Hotel lobby. Guests turned, some smirking, others whispering, as a tall man in a tailored suit sneered down at a young black man in worn shoes. To them, he looked invisible, just another nobody. But what they didn't know was that in less than 10 minutes, the man they mocked would reveal a power none of them could imagine. Tell us in the comments, have you ever been judged before they knew who you really were? Before we begin, hit subscribe. It's appreciated. Marcus had always been a man of quiet ambition. He didn't wear flashy clothes or speak loudly about his dreams, but every step he took carried purpose. He grew up in a small neighborhood where struggle was the norm, where the idea of owning anything beyond necessity felt like a distant fantasy. But Marcus wasn't ordinary. He studied late into the night, worked double shifts, and saved every dollar he could. He believed that one day hard work and perseverance would open doors that society tried to keep closed. At the time, his life seemed simple. He worked at a modest firm, handling the kind of tasks no one noticed but everyone relied on. His co-workers barely remembered his name, yet they depended on his diligence. He carried himself with quiet dignity, even when people around him looked past him. What they didn't see was the vision he carried inside, a future far bigger than the world they allowed him to occupy. But not everyone saw Marcus with admiration. His girlfriend Emily often rolled her eyes when he spoke of patience and long-term goals. She craved instant gratification, luxury dinners, expensive clothes, weekend getaways. To her, Marcus's modest lifestyle felt like settling, like he wasn't enough. She wanted the glitter, the spotlight, the lifestyle of the rich and privileged. And when a wealthy man entered her orbit, dripping with the kind of wealth Marcus couldn't yet show, her loyalty began to waver. One evening, Emily made her choice clear. Without hesitation, she walked out of Marcus's life, choosing comfort over love, appearances over substance. She left him with a silence that cut deeper than words, her absence louder than any insult. Marcus felt the sting, not because of what she took with her, but because of what she failed to see in him. He wasn't broken. He wasn't defeated. If anything, her decision fueled a quiet fire inside him, a determination to prove not just to her, but to the entire world that his worth was not measured by flashy things, but by the empire he was building brick by brick. And soon, the world that dismissed him would be forced to watch. If you were Marcus, standing at that crossroads, would you fight to win her back? Or let her choice push you toward your greatest comeback? Marcus poured himself into his work with a focus that bordered on obsession. The nights grew longer, the days more exhausting, but his dream kept him moving. He invested carefully, studied the markets, and surrounded himself with mentors who believed in him when others didn't. For years, he endured the quiet mockery of those who had written him off as just another guy trying to make it. What they didn't see was the foundation he was laying, stone by stone, until it began to tower over the very world that had overlooked him. Meanwhile, Emily had embraced her new life. Her new partner, Thomas, was everything she thought she wanted: rich, arrogant, and loud about his success. He drove the kind of cars that turned heads, spent money like water, and made sure everyone knew who he was. Emily fit right into that world, trading Marcus's quiet sincerity for champagne nights and beachfront vacations. From the outside, she looked like she had won. From the inside, though, cracks were already forming. It wasn't long before Emily and Thomas arrived at a luxurious resort, a place that gleamed with elegance and whispered exclusivity. For Emily, it was proof she had chosen right. Walking through the marble-floored lobby with her hand on Thomas's arm, she spotted faces turning toward them, nodding with recognition and respect. She smiled, soaking in the validation. But what Emily didn't realize was that this very resort, this shining temple of wealth and power, belonged to someone she once dismissed as unworthy: Marcus. He had become the silent architect of success, the owner whose presence commanded reverence, but whose identity remained hidden, at least for now. As fate would have it, Marcus arrived that same evening. He stepped into the lobby, not in worn shoes anymore, but in a tailored suit that carried quiet authority. The staff greeted him with bowed heads and eager smiles. His mere presence shifted the atmosphere. Guests whispered, trying to place who he was, sensing power even before his name was spoken. And then it happened. Emily saw him. Her breath caught. For a second, she thought it was coincidence, a trick of her imagination. But when she saw the staff rushing to his side, addressing him with respect, her world tilted. The man she had abandoned, the man she had once mocked for not being enough, was the very person who owned everything around her. Thomas noticed her shock and frowned, irritated. "Who is he?" he muttered, dismissive. Emily didn't answer. She couldn't. Her heart pounded, her palms went cold because deep down she already knew the truth she wasn't ready to face. And Marcus? He didn't look her way, not at first. He walked past with calm confidence, carrying himself like a man who had nothing left to prove. But the tension in the air was undeniable. Emily felt small, suddenly invisible in a way she had never experienced before. In that moment, the tables had turned. But the question was, how far would Marcus let that turn go? Would he confront her with the truth, or would he let silence speak louder than revenge? What do you think happens next? Does Marcus give her a moment of reckoning, or does he simply walk away forever? The dinner crowd buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses when Marcus finally entered the grand hall. Every head seemed to turn, but his eyes stayed forward, calm, unreadable. The resort manager hurried over, bowing slightly as he announced his arrival to the guests, his voice echoing, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the owner of this resort, Mr. Marcus Gray." The words struck Emily like thunder. She froze, her fork slipping from her hand, clattering onto her plate. Thomas leaned back in his chair, scoffing at first, until he noticed the staff gathering around Marcus, their deference undeniable. In that instant, the arrogance drained from his face. Emily's heart raced. Memories of her sneers, her dismissal, her choice to abandon him for better came rushing back like a storm. The man she had underestimated now commanded a room she could barely breathe in. Her chest tightened as she realized she was no longer at the center. She was an outsider looking in, powerless. Marcus walked with quiet authority to the front of the hall. He spoke not to Emily, not even to Thomas, but to everyone. His words carried a weight beyond wealth. He thanked the guests, spoke of resilience, of never letting rejection or prejudice dictate one's future. The hall fell silent, hanging on every syllable. And though he never once mentioned her name, Emily felt every word carve into her like a blade. The most painful moment wasn't his success, it was his indifference. Marcus didn't need revenge, didn't need to humiliate her. He had already won by rising above, by refusing to let bitterness define him. And that silent victory, that calm dismissal, cut deeper than any confrontation ever could. Emily's hands trembled. She wanted to rush to him to beg for forgiveness, but she couldn't move. Thomas sat stiffly beside her, jaw clenched, realizing he was in the shadow of a man he had mocked. As Marcus raised his glass in quiet triumph, the room erupted in applause. Emily's world crumbled. She had traded true strength for hollow wealth, and now she was left with nothing but regret. What would you do if the person you once abandoned stood before you? Not just thriving, but owning the very world you thought you'd conquered? Would you beg for a second chance or walk away in silence? The applause slowly faded, but the weight of the moment lingered like a shadow. Marcus stepped down from the stage, surrounded by respect, dignity, and a life he had built through sacrifice and perseverance. Emily sat frozen, her glass untouched, her smile gone. She realized something brutal. Marcus didn't even need to acknowledge her existence. His silence screamed louder than any words ever could. Later that night, as guests danced and celebrated, Emily stood outside on the balcony, staring into the night. The ocean roared beneath her, but all she could hear were Marcus's words about resilience, about never letting rejection define you. She had chosen wealth, but in doing so, she had lost a man who had become far richer in ways money could never buy. Marcus, meanwhile, returned to his private suite, away from the noise. He reflected not on her betrayal, but on his journey. He knew he had faced barriers far greater than heartbreak. systemic doubt, prejudice, and a world that expected him to fail because of the color of his skin. Yet here he was, not just surviving, but thriving. Emily's rejection had hurt, but in hindsight, it was only fuel for his rise. This wasn't about revenge. It was about dignity. Marcus didn't just gain wealth. He gained freedom, peace, and the strength to stand without needing validation. Emily left with Thomas, but her eyes stayed on Marcus. That was her burden, not his. For Marcus, this victory wasn't just personal, it was for everyone ever dismissed or underestimated. Proof that rising above isn't just possible, it's inevitable. So how many more times must people be judged by prejudice before the world learns to look deeper? Like, share, and subscribe for more inspiration.